What is up, YouTube? That's it here, bringing you guys an extra special video. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys how you can build a team around pretty much whatever Pokemon you want. I know people ask me for this type of video all the time. They're like, I want to use this Pokemon, but it sucks. I can't build correctly. I'm going to show you how you guys can pick Pokemon that have even somewhat decent potential. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you probably can't go bust out Metapod and win a regional, but what we're gonna be showing you guys is techniques that you guys can work into your own team building strategies to effectively make any Pokemon perform to its highest potential. So the team we're gonna be building here is gonna be, actually it's gonna be the November Patreon team. I have a Patreon, and I'm leaving a link to that in the description, as well as links to our Discord so you guys can see a bunch of stuff in our community. So do me a favor, check those out. Let me know if you're interested in that type of stuff. But this is the team made exclusively for my November Patreon. So I think starting either today or tomorrow, you guys are going to start seeing highlights from this team on the YouTube channel. One of the benefits for the Patrons is they get to see it, you know, a few weeks early, get to cash in on some of that free ladder points if that's what they're into. You know, I've given this team to a couple people for a few events. And so today the Pokemon we're going to be looking at is Guzzlord. And a lot of people are like, Guzzlord? How are you actually going to use Guzzlord in a format where Xerneas is like so dominant, and Tapus are so dominant, and you know there's so many Pokemon that just have so many moves that can just one-shot this guy, because look, he's Dark Dragon, he has so many weaknesses. So I wanted to make a team that showcased Guzzlord to the highest possible potential that I could make this Pokemon see play. So I looked at Guzzlord, you know, when I look at his stats over here. This guy has just massive HP, and let me see if I can actually like scroll down so you guys can see all of his stats here. That's much better. You guys can now see Guzzlord's speed, stats, all that stuff. You guys can see Guzzlord has a huge base HP pool, but it has really low defenses and a rather low speed. So I'm looking at how I can build this Pokemon, and I'm like, well, what sets it apart from Pokemon like Hydreigon, for example, is that it's really slow and it's really bulky. So we're gonna make a Trick Room team. And now I'm thinking to myself, what are some of the common Trick Room setters? And obviously, when you're thinking about Trick Room setters or Pokemon in general to use in this type of format, you generally think of the... Sorry, I got a message from Adrep, actually. I'll answer that later. Anyways, so... what you think of when you think of team building in this format, you're going to think of what Pokemon to surround yourself with, and you think of the restricted Pokemon, obviously. Like, everyone's using Xerneas, Kyogre, you know, all those things like that. Mewtwo even is starting to see a little bit more play recently. But yeah, so those type of Pokemon are starting to see more play, and what are some good Trick Room setters? So obviously the first one that comes to mind is going to be Duskmane. Duskmane, Necrozma, like Lunala, those are both like really strong Trick Room setters, and you know, one of the ways that you can make a team that's very unique is by using stuff that's not the most commonly used, but are still very good. So what we're actually going to be looking at is Dialga. We're actually going to look at Dialga as our main Trick Room setter. So right off the bat, we have Guzzlord and Dialga. So that means we have huge weaknesses to, and nothing to really resist, like fairy damage. So fairy damage is going to be really big. Remember that as the team kind of fleshes itself out. So we have Guzzlord, Dialga. We now have added weaknesses to the team, because originally Guzzlord's weaknesses were like fairy, fighting, and you know, the like. Fairy, fighting, ice, you know, stuff like that. What we're doing by adding Dialga is also adding another big weakness to fighting. So we have two big weaknesses to fighting. We have a now weakness to ground, we have a neutral to fire and stuff like that. So think about the weaknesses and resistances that you're adding and subtracting the team when you add it. But you know, looking at Dialga, other than the fighting type weakness, which you know, it's on these two Pokemon, but we can mess with the team as it comes together to pretty much mitigate any, like, it's not as much having a weakness to fighting types, it's thinking about what Pokemon have fighting type attacks. And even if you have huge fighting type weaknesses, if you have Pokemon that can deal with said Pokemon that are known for having fighting type attacks, you're gonna be fine. You don't generally always need those psychic fairy types to resist fighting if you just have ways to beat the Pokemon that use the common fighting attacks. So we're gonna talk about that as the team fleshes itself out. I know I'm saying this a bunch. We're gonna get, what I'm planning to do is show all 6 Pokemon, and then gonna show why I'm using said Pokemon. So Dialga here has a bunch of weaknesses it's bringing to the table, but it also has a bunch of resistances. Mainly the big resist is to water, and it's gonna let us just lead versus Kyogres and just set up a Trick Room in their face. So Dialga is gonna be the Pokemon that we're gonna start off with for our main setter. The next Pokemon that we're going to be looking at, it's actually, you're going to think I'm crazy. You guys are going to think I'm crazy, but this is the craziness that makes a team like this work. So we have 2 Dragon-type Pokemon. You're not going to expect it, but the next mon's actually going to be Tapu Fini. And you're thinking, Tapu Fini's Misty Surge, it makes it so obviously you can't get, like, all your Pokemon that are grounded can't get affected by status moves, which is really good because Amoonguss would just tear up any attempts at us winning with Trick Room. But it also cuts the damage of Dragon-type moves. And we're actually going to use that defensively. We're actually not going to use that many Dragon-type moves with these 2 Pokemon, and we're just going to use it to make it so their Dragon weaknesses and neutral damage on Dialga is actually just making it so we take even less damage. Remember, this whole team is about damage mitigation. Fini's one of the best Pokemon in the meta right now at, playing the long game. It gets Heal Pulse, the terrain comes in, takes away other Tapu's terrain, so it really neuters the other Tapus, and just sits on the board, spams Heal Pulse, spams those support moves, and makes it so you can actually play the long game if you have to. So Tapu Fini is going to be a crutch in this team. Also note that Tapu Fini is a fairy type. It does resist a lot of the things we're weak against. Guzzlord has weakness to Dragon. Guzzlord has weakness to Fighting. Guzzlord has weakness to Fairy, but, I can't really get around that just yet. But, Dialga, weak to, Fighting as well. Weakness to Ground, Tapu Fini doesn't really help there, but, neutral from Fire on the Dialga side, and Tapu Fini's could switch in there in case I expect a big Fire Punch from, like, a Groudon or something. So, Tapu Fini coming in, providing a ton of support to the team. We're going to talk about its moveset and how it actually supports it as we build the team. Now, the next Mon, it's pretty obvious who it's going to be. It's going to be Incineroar. Now, this is adding another fighting type weakness, but we're going to talk about how we can easily deal with fighting types as the team fleshes itself out a little more. Incineroar is the basic Intimidator. Most teams should have an Incineroar in them if they expect to, like, really climb, and this is a team I actually, like, really climbed with. Be sure to check out the QR code in the description below. Try it out for yourself. It's free for everybody. And Incineroar is just amazing. It helps stop Xerneas. It gives your team so much more viability and usefulness in really weird situations. This Pokemon is like the Swiss Army knife of VGC 2019. It's adding another ground weakness. It's adding another fighting type weakness. But what it does is it just gives your teams so much more playability in unique situations. And it's a perfect Pokemon to put on a Trick Room team. So the next Mon we're going to be adding is actually going to be another Trick Room setter. Note that we've only used 1 restricted monster. We're going to add another Trick Room setter. We're actually going to be adding Goleo. So Goleo, what it brings to the table, obviously, defensive-wise, is another ground type weakness. So now we have 3 ground type weaknesses, but we're going to talk about why that's a good thing later on. So Goleo, what it brings to the table is it brings the big check versus Xerneas. It's another Trick Room setter. It also has superpower, which can one-shot opposing Incineroars, which if you're looking at our team, we can sometimes struggle with Incineroar because Incineroar is a little bit too sticky for these bulky mons to deal with before it can out-trade us. So, being able to one-shot Incineroar, being able to one-shot Xerneas, being able to set Trick Room, and otherwise just being incredibly bulky, this Goleo set that we're going to be working with as I show you guys is going to be super, super good, and it's just one of the best Pokemon in the format right now. You guys put this Goleo set on almost any team and get amazing results with it, and I highly recommend it. So the last Pokemon on the team, this is going to throw you guys for a loop. Now, in the original version of this team, it was Ludicolo, but I felt that I wasn't really getting that much value out of the Ludicolo. Sure, I got a ground resist in its grass typing, but, other than the fake out, I didn't really see matchups where I would bring it. Like, I like having it in the team preview to throw people off. Maybe they won't lead with their Ogre because I have Ludicolo and stuff like that, but we actually switched it up in the final version of this team to be Alolan Ninetales. Now, I'll talk a lot about Alolan Ninetales when it actually comes to talking about, like, the EVs and move spreads. But look at this team! Look at this team. This is so unique. You don't really see teams like this. This team started out as a team built around Guzzlord. I've surrounded it with 5 Pokemon that I think give Guzzlord the skills that it needs to succeed at the highest level. Sure, we have a ton of weaknesses to somewhat common types, but we have the perfect storm of Pokemon to deal with them. So this is the team. We're now going to move into talking about the movesets and EV spreads and why having so many common weaknesses can sometimes be a good thing when team building. Alright, so we're back into it. You see, I've added EVs. Most of the EVs on these Pokemon are going to be pretty generic, but I think my Guzzlord EVs are actually kind of cool. Anyways, so we see EVs, we see movesets and stuff like that. So a lot of people, well, I'll just start off like this. What does Guzzlord actually do? I'm pretty sure most of you guys have been asking that question this whole time. Why even use a Guzzlord. You know, the Access is Wide Guard. It's all about Wide Guard. This thing is one of the best Wide Guard users, and sure, it's a somewhat telegraphed Wide Guard, but we're going to talk about why it's a good Wide Guard user compared to something else like a Stakataka, as, you know, I talk about the team. So this thing gets Wide Guard. We're running an Eopapa Berry for 50% health. We're going to be running, I think, 4 50% berries in this team. Remember, we're playing the long game, the long Trick Room stall grindy game. So we're running 50% berry on our Guzzlord. We got Wide Guard, Fire Blast, Snarl, Draco Meteor. You know, I didn't really want to use Draco Meteor because we are using the Feeny, but if you look at Guzzlord's moveset, I mean, there's not much else that you could really do. If you guys have any recommendations on something you might want to see otherwise, go for it, but you don't always have Feeny on the board. Sometimes you can just pop a Draco off. Something deals about 50% to most Pokemon, and if you do happen to get a Beast Boost in a special attack, you are absolutely just going to one-shot something with that Draco Meteor, so people have to watch out. Like, if Guzzlord gets one Beast Boost, you are off to the races. So let's talk about the EVs and what makes Guzzlord a really unique Pokemon, and we'll go back into talking about why I chose Guzzlord for the Wide Guard role. So Guzzlord, for example, has like a huge base HP stat. You can somewhat compare Guzzlord to a Blissey, so I decided to build it somewhat like a Blissey and a Chansey. I put all my EVs into defense and special defense. The only reason we're really modest is because that was just the Guzzlord I had on hand from, you know, catching it in game. And so, sure, we're modest. It's not really that important. I would probably rather be, you know, I would probably rather be calm-natured, but the one we're using is modest, and I've had no problems with it whatsoever, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Pretty weird moves, a pretty weird EV spread, though. Like, I don't feel it needs any EVs in HP. I'd rather just go straight defense, special defense, and let its huge base HP, you know, just work it out for me. I feel we get a lot more points putting them in the speed, or sorry, putting them in the, you know, the stats where they're actually really low so they can get a huge boost. Also, talking about speed, it probably would be actually beneficial for this guy to be like made like this. Like, that's probably the best EV spread, you know, minus speed nature, sassy nature with special D boost. That's probably the best, but remember, it's a QR team, and, you know, I went with what I had, so there's nothing really wrong with my moves, with my EV spread, but, you know, there's always slight adjustments that can be made. Obviously, a lot of these can be optimized. Obviously, I don't need 252 in each of these stats either. I'm probably sure I could get away with, you know, putting a little bit in HP from the defense stat, but, you know, there's things to talk about. There's way to min-max pretty much every single spread, but like I said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This EV spread works just fine. So we're going to talk about why Wide Guard. Obviously, Wide Guard's really good in this format. Think about the most common threatening Pokemon are like, you know, Xerneas, Kyogre, these things like the Scarf Ogre, D-Gleam, you know, Groudon. Look, our team has 3 Precipice Blade weaknesses. Like, oh my gosh, that's so much damage, right? Like 3 Precipice Blades potential one-shots if you're not playing, if you're set up incorrectly. If you're caught with your pants down, you can get one-shotted on each of these mons from a Precipice Blades. So, what Guzzlord does is it comes in, and let's just take the Kyogre match, for example. You know, Woody Kyogre is one of the most oppressive matchups in the game. It's one of those oppressive matchups. They just lead with the Kyogre, they lead with the Ludicolo, or they lead with, like, Serena, or they lead, like, Serena Ogre, or they lead, like, Tornadus Ogre, and what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to go Water Spout, and obviously Serena can somewhat deal with it, but we'll talk about Serena later. That's one of the reasons we have, like, Ninetales, Incineroar, and stuff like that in the team. But yeah, so they just lead Kyogre, and they're like, I'm going to Water Spout. And so what you can do with Guzzlord is you just click Wide Guard, and they're like, if there's any situation in which they want to go, aha, I know that Guzzlord gets Wide Guard, I'm just going to nuke it instead. What are they nuking you with? What are they going to Scald you? Are they going to Thunder you? Best case scenario, they're going to Ice Beam you for like 35% because you're bulky AF. So this is one of the Pokemon that can really use Wide Guard correctly. So let's compare it to a Stakataka, who would be what most people would use in this situation. First of all, Stakataka adds the same fighting weakness, adds another ground weakness, and doesn't really provide that much more to this table, you know, versatility-wise that Guzzlord would bring. Like, Guzzlord can't get intimidated. Guzzlord provides that big Snarl, which we're going to talk about, like, is so important in this game right now, especially at the Trick Room up. You just pop one Snarl, and most threats, since you're so bulky, you can just wall anything after like one Snarl. And it's a stab Snarl. It's actually pretty strong. So yeah, like, Guzzlord can't get nuked versus like Kyogre can be like, well, I know that that's Stakataka and Wide Guard, so I'm just gonna Scald it and one-shot it. That doesn't work. Like, Ludicolo and Kyogre and that whole like core of Pokemon, like the whole Rain core, has absolutely no power versus a Guzzlord whatsoever. You can just bust out your Guzzlord and they're like, I have nothing for this at all. So it's one of those Pokemon that fits a very niche role in the meta right now. It's great versus rain teams. You can bring it to almost any rain matchup. Like, think of the Pokemon that are in the rain matchup. You got Kyogre, Woodicolo, Tornadus. You sometimes see Ferrothorn, Serena. Like, bruh, like, Rebody, like, all of those Pokemon if played correctly. And they got, like, nothing. Like, Snarl destroys half of them, makes them completely useless. Fire Blast works on the other ones. Draco Meteor hits people for neutral, and, you know, it's all about playing it correctly, but if you play it correctly, it's pretty good. So we're going to talk about, you know, obviously you guys have probably left so many comments, type it in the comments saying, like, all you got to do is Moonblast it. With Xerneas, everyone's using Xerneas. All I got to do is Moonblast it. Like, Guzzlord sucks, but it's 4 times weak to Fairy. So let's look at the rest of the team, because now we're going to look at what Guzzlord actually brings to the table. And this is how you guys can actually make it so you can make those niche Pokemon good in any team if you build correctly. So, sure, yeah, Guzzlord has a 4 times weakness to Fairy. All they gotta do is lead Tapu Koko, Tapu Lele. Those are 2 completely common Pokemon. Xerneas, you know, so many Pokemon. Like, let's take the Tapu Koko from Attribution, for example. If they lead Tapu Koko, look at your team. What are they really in the Thunderbolt? Even if they like Koko and you like Feeny, you took away its terrain, they're completely useless. All you gotta do is protect Snarl, and they're gone. But, you know, he's gonna win a Dazzling Gleam. And let's talk about Koko movesets. A lot of them are choiced, either Choice Scarf, Choice Specs. Sometimes you see the best set, but, like, you know, Koko cannot make contact with me because I can just wide guard it. Let's talk about Tapu Lele. Well, if they lead, like, Lele, let's think of, like, a common lead, like Lele, literally anything. Well, we know that they're going to Moonblast. And knowing that they're going to Moonblast, because they have to, that's the only way that most teams can even deal with the Guzzlord, so we've influenced them into leading Lele. We've influenced them into showing potentially their speed tiering based off, like, let's say I lead my Ninetales, they lead their Lele. If for any reason their Lele is faster than my Ninetales, that means they're Scarfed, which means if they Moonblast, we know they're locked into it. All we have to do is hard switch into something like Goleo, bulk out that Moonblast like an absolute champion, set up a Trick Room, or just Sunsteel Strike it. That's their big check. We've influenced our opponents through our team building into doing exactly what they think they need to do to succeed. Your opponents are always going to want to do the things that they need to succeed. They're going to not always do the most optimal thing. You know, it's not like a freaking program. It's not like a computer. But your opponents are always going to want to do the most optimal play, right? And so by just organizing your team the way you've organized it, we've set up situations to where we know that they're going to be bringing certain things to beat our things. We don't even have to bring those things. We've set up situations where they have to do those things, otherwise they lose. They have to bring the Tapu Lele. If they lead Xerneas and I lead Guzzlord, you might go for a Geo. Like, you might, you probably will, but then after that Geo, you know you're Moonblasting the Guzzlord because obviously D-Gleam's not going to work. It gets Wide Guard. You're just going to Moonblast it. And because I know you're going to Moonblast, that gives me so much more freedom to punish it, to work around it, because you have to do it. You have to keep me honest. That's like the best play that you have. So Guzzlord brings a lot to the table, and you guys will see in the videos after throughout the week, like, people say Guzzlord sucks, 4 times weak to Fairy. And I was like, no, I want you to think that it sucks. I want you to be bringing your fairies. Look at my team. I have, like, Dialga and Solgaleo. Please bring all of your fairy Pokemon. I don't even really have to bring my Guzzlord, but I know that you're bringing your fairies to punish it. And stuff like that is why I think Guzzlord is, like, really, really good right now. We talked about the Guzzlord. We're going to be talking about Dialga. Dialga is the next Pokemon of the team. You can see its moveset right here. It's just a standard bulky set. We're running another 50% berry. This thing notably has pressure, which is pretty good. A lot of things like Kyogre, you know, a lot of Pokemon only have moves that have 5 PP. Once they PP max, they go up to 8. So being able to use pressure and just stay on the board as long as possible is going to make it so you can actually peep out a lot of those Pokemon. So moveset is Protect, Trick Room, or a Sphere Flash Cannon. And I thought about this for a really, really long time, and I'm like, what is the best Dialga moveset? This thing gets so many good moves. It gets Thunder, Dragon attacks. I think it gets Flamethrower. Do you get Flamethrower, Dialga? Let's see. Yeah, it does. All right, Flash Cannon. But so after looking at it though, I realized that this is the best Dialga set. Moveset wise. You are not going to find a better Dialga set than this moveset wise for offensive coverage. Now, let's talk about this. So Flash Cannon hits all those fairies that we know are coming. And another thing talking about Guzzlord is there's not really a lot of fairy attacks that aren't on fairy Pokemon. think about it, every once in a while you might see a Serena play rough, but Serena also gets like high jump kick, so it doesn't really matter in that situation. But you're not going to see people just running like Dazzling Gleam Gengar. That's just not normal. You're not going to ever see that type of stuff. So, you know, you can always flash cannon those Tapus and other things that normally get Dazzling Gleam for super effective damage. But what I really want to talk about here is Aura Sphere. Now, it's an 80 base power move that gets around accuracy, which is pretty good against Moody Smeargles, but the reason we're mainly using Aura Sphere is, let's talk about what it hits for super effective damage. Now, remember at the start of the video where I talked about how we have a bunch of fighting weaknesses. We have Guzzlord, Dialga, and Incineroar, and, you know, very limited ways to mitigate fighting type damage. You know, Tapu Fini being one of the better options, but that's mostly about it. Goleo takes neutral, it's really bulky. Ninetales takes neutral, but that'd be losing our Sash. And, you know, Dialga and Incineroar can eat the attacks, and Incineroar has Intimidate, so, you know, we can work around it. But, let's talk about what are the common fighting type attack users. There's not really any good fighting Pokemon that are commonly used nowadays. There might be like one or two, but, you know, nothing, like, you don't really see Mosa anymore. You don't see like Machamps or Hitmontops or anything. So it's not really fighting Pokemon that are good. It's Pokemon that know fighting type attacks. So let's talk about common fighting type attack users. Every once in a while, you're going to see Drain Punch on Incineroar, but I think the most common ones are probably Sacred Sword Kartana and Superpower Stakataka. Those are probably the two most common fighting type users, and Aura Sphere Dialga can one-shot most Stakatakas depending on how they're built, and if they're running Superpower, they're heavily invested in offense to pick up the big KOs on things like Incineroar. Most people are even, the only reason these things even have fighting type attacks is so they can hit Incineroar, so, you know, we're punishing the things that punish Incineroar. It's correct team building, so Aura Sphere deals about 30 to 50% depending on opposing Incineroar sets, so it can two-shot Incineroars, or it's always going to get the three-shot. All you have to do is like correctly play around the berry. But other than that, like, Aura Sphere Flash Cannon gives you such good coverage. Like, tell me stuff that you can't hit for at least neutral damage. Like, think about it. Let's think about Pokemon you can't hit for at least neutral damage. One that's coming to mind right now is Ho-Oh. Sure, you can't hit Ho-Oh very hard, but look at the rest of the team. Ho-Oh is a bit of a problem for sure, but, you know, we definitely have ways to grind it out. Ho-Oh can't really do that much against Incineroar. Ho-Oh is actually not that great against Ninetales, believe it or not. We'll talk about that as, you know, Ninetales gets its turn to be shown. But other than that, like, you know, we can pretty much deal neutral to super effective damage against everything. And remember, we're running a Tapu Fini, so it's not like we really want dragon attacks. You know, I don't want to just run Thunder to beat Ogre because Guzzlord can like 1v6 most Ogre teams when played correctly. So I don't need to play Thunder. I don't need Flamethrower to deal with Ferrothorns because I can just two-shot with Aura Sphere. Also note, like, Guzzlord and Incineroar, those are two Pokemon that have fire type attacks as well. So this thing can pretty much deal with almost anything. EV spread, nothing too spectacular. Again, we're running a modest one just because I have one. I'd more preferably like a special defense natured one. So again, you'd want to go something like this. Take out your EVs. Actually, the Dialga I do have actually has 0 IVs in speed. I was incredibly lucky. I just caught a modest one that had 0 speed IVs. But again, you know, you want to take out all your speed. You want to use the speed reduced nature. And again, I want sassy because special defense moves are pretty much where the metagame's at the moment. But again, Dialga's super cool. I pretty much just threw this together. And again, EV spreads could be totally optimized to be better. But, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There we go. There we go. So Dialga, super good. I bring this guy every single game to pretty much every matchup. This thing is one of the better restricted mounts right now, I think. Like, what really beats Dialga? Like, Groudon? Yeah, it's Groudon. So that's why, look at the rest of our team. Look how we slowly have optimized it. It's not just the Guzzlord team. So let's talk about Dialga, right? So it has that big weakness to ground. Wide Guard Guzzlord. Fini threatens Groudon in a lot of situations. They don't know if we have water attacks, and depending on if his weather's even up, water attacks, stabbed water attacks will do a lot. Also, Fini can get access to Grass Knot, so they have to respect that. Incineroar can fake out and intimidate a Groudon and make it so Dialga can just set up on it, and then Dialga's Flash Cannons do about half to Groudon anyways. So if, like, I can set up on a Groudon, Incineroar Dialga can just go into a one-shot on it. Sogoleo's not too amazing, but again, Solgaleo also can get, like, Wide Guard and stuff like that. We outspeed Groudon by a few base speed anyways, most common sets, so Solgaleo can potentially hit Groudon for a pretty good Sunsteel Strike. And then Ninetales can take away Groudon's weather and, like, one-shot it back with a super effective Ice attack. So it doesn't really look like, it looks at first glance like, ooh, Groudon, body that Dialga, but our team is made correctly to be able to come in and support all of the Pokemon through correct team building. So Dialga's pretty good, and I bring it like every game. I usually lead Dialga like every single game. It's pretty good. Up next is going to be Tapu Fini, and again, remember, Tapu Fini's Misty Terrain protects us from, getting spored, getting, hit by, random hacks, RNG, effects and stuff like that. But I think the biggest thing is, we're running Trick Room, right? So if we're running like Dialga, Guzzlord, and stuff like that, if our opponent were just to bust out like a slower Pokemon like a Moongus, we could set up Trick Room, but then they just put all our stuff to sleep. Or we try and set the Trick Room, and they would just Spore us before it can get set up. So what Fini does is it really makes it so we can still fight those type of Pokemon. Our teams are generally pretty good against Amoonguss, even though there's Rage Powder, because we have so many fire attacks and other super effective moves. Remember, nowadays most Amoongusses are carrying the Pasho Bear, I think, which cuts psychic attacks. We're mostly going in with fire and ice attacks, so we can always play around the Amoonguss. Also note that Fini gets Haze, so like if we're caught with our pants down and there's like a Xerneas, we can always haze that out. Moonblast is a good stab move. Heal Pulse is where it's at, and let me see, another thing I want to talk about Fini before I talk about the Heal Pulse plays is, I think I've mentioned it before, but people leading Tapu Lele, people leading Tapu Koko, we can just lead Fini and take away the boost that they get, because like, let's talk about Lele teams. Like Lele teams, like Lele and Mewtwo's a really good core. If I take away your Psychic Terrain though, I'm not nearly as afraid of you. Like if you have a Tapu Koko and you don't have your Electric Terrain, my Fini will actually just trade with you. Like I will just Moonblast you twice, you will hit me once, proc my berry, I'll Moonblast you, potentially with a special attack. I don't technically need to, but I can just trade with you. Easy. So Fini is super good, and this EV spread here is just one that I actually had left over from 2017, that again, if there ain't no problems with it, don't need to fix it. Main reason why we're going so heavy into bulk is because more often than not, I have to switch Fini in on a big physical attack, like a big fighting attack or a big ground attack or something like that. So that's why we have so much investment in defense here, or like I have to switch down like a Psyshock or something like that. So I have to usually switch this thing on physical attacks, so that's why we have so much investment in defense. But you can actually see how, since Fini has a higher base specialty, the two stats end up pretty much being about the same, like only a little bit more in specialty. But let's talk about Heal Pulse, right? So our team has like 4 50% berries. We're running 4 Pokemon that have incredible, 5. We're running 5 Pokemon with incredible bulk. And being able to Heal Pulse, if I get like 1 Heal Pulse off on Goleo, Incineroar, Dialga, or Guzzlord, I'm probably going to win the game. It gives them like a second berry. And a lot of the times, like if I were to lead like Guzzlord, Dialga, and have Fini in the back, obviously if they have Moonblast with Leo or something like that, or Dazzling Beam or whatever, they're going to be using that first turn. I can hard switch out Guzzlord for Fini. Any nukes, and if they hard read me and just go for like a nuke on Dialga, I know Dialga can live through almost anything. So, Dialga's going to get pretty low. Maybe they proc its berry, but then I go back up to like 50%, get my Trick Room off. Turn 2, usually people switch to deal with the Trick Room, or they're protecting because it's first turn Trick Room. I pop the Heal Pulse on the Dialga. Dialga goes back up to full. Dialga starts dealing the damage, and if anyone started to set up or any of those situations, we can always haze if we had to. So Fini's like the perfect Pokemon, as weird as it sounds, to pair with Guzzlord and Dialga. Provides great resistances to the things those Pokemon are weak against, provides perfect support with Heal Pulse. Haze makes it so they don't get steamrolled, and Moonblast is just always solid damage, and great Pokemon. I think Tapu Fini is amazing in this matchup. Wins me so many games. When you guys use this QR code, be sure to use Tapu Fini because it is amazing. So up next is going to be the standard Incineroar set. This is the Incineroar set I've used on pretty much most teams for like the past month or so. It gets the Fake Out, it gets Flare Blitz, it gets Knockoff. It has enough bulk to be able to live through pretty much anything, and just enough speed to be able to outspeed other Incineroars. So with this Incineroar set, you can confidently lead versus other Incineroars and be like, hey, I can Fake Out you first before you can do anything. And I think having at least 20 in speed on Incineroar is so value. Because like, let's say I wanted to lead Incineroar Dialga, and they also have an Incineroar. But, like, let's say they lead Incineroar Xerneas, right? So if they lead Incineroar Xerneas, if I have a faster Incineroar than their Incineroar, I can Fake Out their Incineroar to stop it from Fake Outing or roaring my Dialga, and I can just set my Trick Room. Trick Room's up. Look how bulky my team is. I got the not speed that I need to succeed. So guaranteed Trick Room up, it's probably going to be a game win, and it's all because my Incineroar was faster than his, because if my Incineroar was slower than his, and remember you can see who's faster based off the Intimidates activating, whose activates first versus second, he could just fake up my Dialga, set up a Geomancy, and then I got like nothing. I mean, I guess I could have like hard read that and went for Roars, but like, what if he just wanted to pop a Moonblast off and get a free Moonblast, and then I roar him into something that works in my Trick Room or something like that? That's all bad. I'd rather just go first, fake, like guarantee that I can fake you out first, and sometimes you don't. You know, sometimes they have like a lot more in speed, but you know, we speed creep like 2 levels ahead because most people don't have any in speed. Most people actually reduce speed to work in Trick Room. And so we speed creep the 4, we speed creep the 12 EVs, we got all the way up to 20, and you know, it's definitely enough. And we have just enough bulk to be able to do everything we need. Again, probably careful would probably be better natured, but I just had an adamant one on hand. And again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Roar is super important. You need Roar, otherwise Xerneas can potentially mop you up. You're not always going to have a Trick Room up. And, you know, you're also going to be fighting situations where you're going against, like, weakness policy mons. Sometimes you're going to be going up against other Trick Rooms. And their Trick Room is much harder Trick Room than yours. Like, remember, look at our mons. We don't have, like, minus speed natures on a lot of these things. So, you know, you don't want to get set up on by other Trick Rooms. You need to be able to roar other Trick Room setters. There's so many other situations where Roar is just extreme value. Works against, like, Shadow Tag. You can roar your own teammates and stuff like that. And, you know, what are you using instead of Roar? Protect? Maybe U-turn? It's not as value as you would imagine. Roar is just something that it is so good. It really strengthens your matchup versus other Incineroars for sure, and other Xerneases and stuff like that. So I highly recommend Roar. I highly recommend this Incineroar set. You can use it in pretty much any team. This Incineroar set is golden in any team. If you haven't found an Incineroar set you like, just start using this one. It's actually pretty good. Alright, so we're going to be showing the next restricted mon. We have a Goleo with an Expert Belt. Now, a lot of people would recommend that you use Life Orb. Expert Belt deals 1.2 damage if you're hitting target for super effective. A lot of people would recommend Life Orb because, you know, this needs to be super effective. But since we're running, you can see an incredibly bulky Goleo. I don't want to sacrifice any health. We're running full HP attack. And a lot of people are like, that's dumb. Why do you have your stats in HP? This thing's bulky as heck. This thing is so bulky. Remember, we're running a bulky team. We got heal pulsers. This thing can just like live through most moves. Like a lot of people are like, all right, I can water spout that and it'll KO, and I'm like, it won't. Yeah, I'll actually just live your big damage. I will just live it. And this whole team is about bulking through their options and just staying on the board as long as possible. And, you know, the last 4 are just in speed, just in case. 97 base is a pretty common move. Sogo is a pretty common mon. More often than not, they're just going to be faster. But against other people that have the same idea as you, this totally works. You do need, I think, the full investment in attack, especially because we're running the Expert Belt over the Life Orb. You need to be as strong as humanly possible, because what we're going to be slamming here is Superpower and Sunsteel Strike. And if this moveset of Protect, Trick Room, Fighting Type Attack, Steel Attack looks familiar to you, it's because it's the exact same offensive set as our Dialga. It's exactly the same, it's just power creeped up to 9,000. Dialga's a lot more defensive, Goleo is a lot more offensive. What we can do is this set right here, it lets us one-shot Xerneas with Sunsteel Strike. It lets us one-shot pretty much anything that has a steel type weakness. They are deleted, and it's gonna two-shot most normal things anyways. But the superpower is the play here. This superpower with the Expert Belt and the full metal body, making it so we can't have our stat lowered, like it can't lower our attack stat in most particular here. It's gonna make sure we can one-shot Incineroars. This thing is weak to fighting. You just lead the Goleo, one-shot the Incineroar, one-shot the Stakataka, 2 Pokemon, one-shot the Ferrothorn in a lot of situations as well. A lot of Pokemon that gives our team a lot of problems. And again, we can have another Trick Room setter. A lot of people sleep on the fact that Goleo can be a setter. Like, a lot of people are like, all right, I'm gonna lead this and this totally punishes Dialga. I know this will beat the Dialga. And they're like, Goleo, that is not what I expected. And you can always, like, a lot of the times I can lead Dialga and Goleo, and they're like, okay, what's going to happen is he's going to set up Trick Room with that Dialga, and I can just protect with Dialga or switch it out for literally anything and just protect, Trick Room with the Goleo, because they just don't expect the Trick Room from this Pokemon, and it totally learns it, and we're totally bulky enough to live through a potential nuke into that slot and just set the Trick Room up. I highly recommend this set as well if you're looking for just random restricted mons to try. This is a really good one, and this set will win you so many games. People do not expect the bulk this thing puts out, so definitely recommend Goleo. It really protects our team from weaknesses to Incineroar and Xerneas. That's one of the main reasons we use it. If there's one Pokemon that I don't really have to bring every game, it's this Goleo, but the fact that we can bring it for an extra punch, it's pretty much our big Pokemon that can actually pick up KOs. So You should probably bring this thing if you're lower than like 1700 and just like steamroll people, but the higher you get, the more you're actually going to put the value in bulk and start using like the Guzzlord Feenies versus this Soul Goleo, because a lot of the time, you know, people aren't just going to let their Incineroars get one-shotted by Superpower. They're not just going to stay in and get one-shotted, and you know, you can only use Superpower so many times before you're actually useless yourself. So while this Soul Goleo is really good, it's like a double-edged sword. You got to be really smart about how you play it, but if you do play it correctly, it's an amazing Pokemon. So the last Pokemon, right? The last Pokemon we're looking at, the Pokemon that most of you guys are probably thinking, like, why didn't you just build the team around this Pokemon? Well, we kind of did. We're going to talk about it. We have a Sash Ninetales. This is the standard Sash set that I've used since 2017, since this Pokemon came out. A lot of people are probably wondering, like, wow, I really thought you were going to use Aurora Veil. I'm not a fan of Aurora Veil, especially in a format where if I lead Ninetales, they can just switch in their Weather user, and Weather's so prevalent in this format, for example, that it would just be a waste. Protect is pretty common. Encore is what makes it good. Freeze Dry and Blizzard. Freeze Dry is going to make it so you can one-shot things like Ludicolo. You can two-shot things like Kyogre, deal big damage to Groudon as well. Like, people are not prepared for ice attacks. Look at most teams. They're just not prepared for ice attacks. Blizzard is another huge AoE attack. This Pokemon has a great speed tiering too. It's the same as Kartana. And remember guys, Kartanas aren't running full speed anymore because those vested sets are so popular, which means you're going to go first. You're going to Blizzard everything into oblivion, and it's going to actually be really, really good. For those of you guys that haven't tried using Ninetales, serious, like, let's just talk about it. If I were to lead Ninetales Dialga, that shuts off any sort of, like, Xerneas, Reindeer, Kyogre lead. Like, if they're leading, like, if they lead Ludicolo Pelipper, well, sorry, not Pelipper, Ludicolo, Kyogre, well, I just took away their Rain, and I can one-shot their Ludicolo, and I can really seriously chunk their Kyogre. And again, they just don't have enough damage because I took away their Rain. Like, taking away the Rain from the matchup's huge. If they're going to lead, like, Xerneas, and I get a Trick Room up, I can just Anchor the Xerneas into Geo, because we're now slower than the Xerneas is because he just got the ×2 speed boost. So, there's so many useful situations. You can also lead, like, Dialga, whatever Pokemon you want. Protect with Dialga if you know that you can't live the Hard Nuke. Switch in the, well, one of the reasons why you protect Dialga, like, let's say they led, like, Incineroar Groudon, and you're like, oof, I don't want to switch my Incineroar in here, because I know for a fact that, like, sure, I could get the Intimidate up, but I'd lose my Incineroar in the process, potentially, and I'd take so much damage on my Dialga. So, what you could do is, you just switch in the Ninetales. Sure, it clocks your Sash, but you know they're going Fake Out Precipice Blades. They're Fake Outing your Dialga slots. They're going for a Precipice Blade to deal that big damage. Sure, you're going to get your Sash potentially clocked, or, you know, a lot of damage done to it, but what you're going to start to do is dip those guys down, take away their Weather, then you can Encore the Incineroar into Fake Out, and then, you know, the Precipice Blades just isn't really going to do as much. You lose your Ninetales with the Precipice Blades, and then you send out an actual Trick Room Mon. You can set your Guzzlord, you can send out your Soul Goleo, you can set your Feeny, your own Incineroar, what have you, and just, it sucks that you lost the Pokemon, but you got a Trick Room up, you incapacitated one of their Pokemon, locked it into Encore, like, locked it into Fake Out, and you were just going to win the game. You took away his Weather, you took away all his momentum, you are playing the game on your own terms now, and that's something that Ninetales brought to the table that, you know, most Pokemon aren't that good at just completely stopping momentum. Like, what this whole team does is it sees anyone trying to win the game in, like, 2 turns, and it says, stop it. Like, you stop it, you take a chill pill, you play the game at my pace, and that's what I really like about this team. So hopefully you guys like this team. Please, if you guys have any tips or tricks or ways you can make it better, please leave those in the comments below. Like I said, I'm leaving a link to the QR code for this team, as well as a link to all the social medias. You can see we have Twitch, YouTube, obviously we're on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, and Discord. We're going to be leaving a link to the Discord. My Discord is free for anyone for the next 2 months as somewhat of like a Christmas gift. So if you guys want to join the Discord, join in on the action. We just talk about Pokemon and other video games 24/7. It's the best place to see when I go live for my streams, best place to get reminders for videos, and like I said, people are team building. You know, you can always look for battles for whatever format you really like in there. So I just want to say thank you guys for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.